This episode is proudly supported by OpenTable.
Nearly 1/3 of diners are booking same day. So they're making those decisions on the spot. And 10% are making their bookings within just a few hours. And so it's why it's so important to have booking software like OpenTable, which allows your diners to discover you. And so when restaurants are on platforms like OpenTable, they're much more likely to be discovered. We help diners to connect to restaurants. Ultimately, having technology, using technology, helps you to reattach to those diners.
Experience the power of OpenTable. For an exclusive offer, visit restaurant.opentable.com.au/DITW.
I'd like to acknowledge Australia's First Nation people as the traditional custodians of the land, and for this episode in particular, the Turrbal people. I pay my respects to their elders past, present and emerging.
The most important part with just any restaurant in general is to remember you're there for the people, I'm like a firm believer that the restaurant decides what it wants to be. If people keep asking me for this, well, then that's going to be on the list.
This is Over a Glass. I'm Shanteh Wale. Aleks Balodis can be found swinging wine bottles at Siffredi's spaghetti bar on most days of the week. Unless, of course, it's a Monday, and then you're out of luck, because he'll be on the couch. Aleks is an award-winning sommelier and joins me today to talk all things pasta and pinot. Hi, Aleks. Thanks for joining me.
Absolute pleasure.
I know it is Saturday morning, and you'd probably still be in bed if it wasn't for me. What would you typically be doing normally on your Saturday morning?
Still in bed, and then pretty much walked out. I live 2 blocks away from work, so I've pretty much timed it these days. I can wake up 30 minutes, showered, dressed, and at work.
There's so many pros and cons to that. When I was in Canada, I lived a block away from my work as well, and I would always on a double shift go home for a shower, and I loved that. But then at the same time, if someone needed me, there was no excuse to not just kind of pop by.
Yeah, the best part is every time that I've run out of something, on a busy day, whether it be docket pads, printer ink or something, next week I double order it. So my apartment is just full with just anything you need to run a restaurant. I could run a restaurant out of my apartment, to be honest.
Oh, that sounds like an idea and something people have done. So be careful what you wish for. Aleks, tell me about how you got the wine bug and how you got your start.
I think my parents had a small cafe restaurant when I was growing up, so many fond memories of being 14 and polishing cutlery, forced to polish cutlery on my days off. But really it wasn't until I finished uni, did all that, and I was just working in restaurants whilst applying for jobs, and I met the head sommelier at the restaurant I was working at, and I just remember just seeing him just sitting down in between services, just trying all these wines, and then he'd get to go upstairs and sit in his nice air-conditioned office. I'm like, what is your job? What is it? He's like, I buy wines for this restaurant. I was like, that's a full-time job, just trying wines and buying wines. And he's like, yeah. I was like, I told him, I said, I'll have your job within 5 years. It took me 6 in the end, but I eventually did take his job.
It's funny when you don't realize it's a thing and you think, gosh, they've got it cushy, which as you now know is not so easy. So how did you go about securing that job?
Once I found out that was his full-time job, I just cozied up to him as much as I could. I was probably very annoying at age 21, just asking him all these mundane questions, but I kept hassling him, kept asking. Eventually, you go through the rungs of a junior sommelier, assistant sommelier, and just kept learning as much as I could. You'd finish on the clock and you'd go home and you just read books. Read as much as you could. And yeah, I guess you just got to be there long enough and study hard enough and you'll eventually get there.
Well, as someone that did know you at 21, I think I met you around that time. You weren't annoying at all, but you were very keen and you threw yourself into...
There's a lot of people that would disagree with that, though.
Well, I think it was enthusiastic and I tend to love that. And how did you, go about becoming a sommelier? And you eventually moved over to London. But what did you do about kind of, other than just reading a lot, how did you go about getting that accreditation?
Just like most people, there's always a couple of different channels. Obviously, you've got the quartermaster sommeliers, which was the most pivotal. But you've got your WSETs as well. So I think my work at the time paid for level 1, 2, and 3 for me. And I always wanted to do quartermaster sommeliers, and I think that's probably the most structured way to go about it. Yeah,
certainly it is. And, it's a really good kind of avenue, especially if you're working on the floor. And when did you move to London, and what was the decision behind that?
I think at the time it just felt like there was a bit of a glass ceiling over my head. I didn't think my boss was going to move on anytime soon, nor why would he? It was quite the cushy job. But I felt that, and look, I'm probably going to get in trouble for this, but there was just so many times going to do different sort of competitions and exams and stuff like that in Sydney, and I felt the Sydney sort of wine scene was just so kind of cliquey and a little elitism. No offense, Shanteh, but I felt that if I was going to go do it, I'll go try to, instead of just moving down to Sydney, getting a job at, say, Key or something, I thought I'd just try to see how far I could go with it. So I think there was when the Top 50 Restaurants Award, when it was in Melbourne, there was the Somms of the World program. I think there was like 50 of us. I think like 25 somms from all around Australia and 25 somms from some of the restaurants that were actually up for awards, and managed to kind of come pretty close with one sommelier from London. And luckily I had an EU passport, and he just pretty much at the end of it said, mate, if you ever come to London, you've got a job here. So I think I gave 1 month's notice as soon as pretty much the next day. And 4 weeks after that, I was in London. It was tough, by the way.
Well, I know that they are known for working crazy hours, but working their absolute butts off, so hats off to them. You worked at the Clove Club in London. What was the experience like?
I thought that it was great. Like, I got to try so many different wines. So, like, everything that you've just been studied, like things that you'd only just read in books your whole life, and actually getting to taste them almost on a weekly basis was pretty cool. But like you said, the hours are rough. I remember doing a 100-hour work week once. At 40, 50 hours, your legs hurt. You can imagine that on the floor. But at 100 hours, your neck, your arms, and that's still me being at like 27, 28. Everything hurts at 100 hours.
Yeah, that's brutal. I've never gone over 90, so I can't actually even imagine that. That's pretty much sleeping at the restaurant, no?
Oh, I remember the day we shot the longer shift. I think I started at probably 9 a.m. and because we were then shut over the Christmas break, I would finish service at around, I think, 11 p.m. and then followed that up with a sweet 5-hour stock take.
Oh, God. Stock takes, they always come at the worst time. Brutal. So what did you notice was the biggest difference of kind of drinking culture and restaurant culture? Was there anything that you kind of were challenged by when you first moved over there?
No, I think I was most surprised by, I think there's sort of a few wine distributors in Australia that have really like kind of convinced all of Australia that these are the wines that everyone in the whole world's talking about right now, and everyone just kind of buys them up on allocation. And then I think I was kind of surprised, like when I went over there, and some of those wines were kind of obscure to a lot of sommeliers over there.
Can you give me an example of like a wine that you're talking about?
Oh, not without getting in trouble with certain distributors in Australia.
Fair enough. When you first go over, to a different country, I can imagine it is intimidating because you kind of are like, well, I've got to learn a huge wine list and I've got to do a lot. Do you start by just kind of, finding wines you are familiar with and feeling confident about and kind of, getting your confidence and getting your feet that way when you kind of step out onto the floor?
Yeah, I think it just comes to you over a while. But like if you've done all that structured, all those tastings, all those, reading all those books, you kind of have an idea of what it should look like. And in most good restaurants, they'll give you a little sort of freedom to kind of push these wines. And if I describe that wine differently than what it might look like in your glass, well, that's on me, and I'll take it off your bill and we'll go back to the drawing board. But I think the best part is to just try to go out and crack those wines, and then you're like, all right, well, this is pretty much what I thought it would look like, or this is a bit more left of center, and then that's now in your arsenal. You now know it. It's in the back of your head. This wine looks like this.
Yeah, and it's good to have those wines because, you never know what the client's going to ask for or what they're into. So you've got to have like a range, don't you, that you kind of have up your sleeve and you go, okay, I can throw this out. But tell me about your journey with Cabernet, or Claret, as they say over there.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe it's just in Brisbane, but everyone seems to kind of dislike. Maybe it's because, we've got 35-degree days over here, and drinking big 15% alcohol Cabernets from Margaret River just doesn't make sense over here. But something about just the history of Bordeaux and all these, rich fuddy-duddy types just only wanting to drink Bordeaux. After a while, you wrap your head and you're like, all right, it's not all one-dimensional. There's such a big range out there, including there's some pretty cool new age sort of even natty Bordeaux producers like Clos de Jaguaron and a few others out there that you're like, oh wow, there actually is some people pushing the limit of what Bordeaux should look like.
Yeah, definitely. I've had a range of kind of emotions about Bordeaux and about Cabernet, and now I have a huge love of Cabernet. It's probably, 1/4 of my heart when it comes to wine, so I love it. But I think it does manifest in so many different forms, and you can have some really traditional stuff, and you can have some really lively, bright, lower alcohol expressions. But do you end up, drinking Cabernet yourself now?
Just, like most people who work with wine, I drink beer, Shanteh.
Yeah, there's nothing wrong with that. So tell me about when you returned to Australia, you were offered the position of head sommelier at Stokehouse Q, which must have been, a pretty amazing feeling. How did that come about?
Yeah. To be honest, a little shout out to my old general manager, Peter McMahon. So when you move over to London, obviously a lot of people, they slowly start to forget about you and stop calling as much. But the old GM of Stokehouse, I think he called me 3 or 4 times while I was still in London just to check in on me. So when things did change, my old the head som that had trained me for all those years back in the day, when he finally did move on, he's like, hey, this position's open and we'd love you to come back. And I was like, yeah, I've had a very soft spot for that place always, growing up there from that was my whole wine journey. All pretty much, it just felt coming full circle to go back there and do that job.
Yeah, I think that's amazing, and congratulations to you. Unfortunately, how long did it last before the world essentially shit itself with COVID?
I think maybe I got a good 2 years in there.
Oh, that's good. I thought it was a shorter position.
Nah, about 2 years, followed by a pretty sweet redundancy, so I'm never going to complain.
Well, 2 years is definitely more than enough time to get your kind of teeth in there. What did you kind of approach it with? Did you go in and kind of say, I want to keep everything the same? Did you want to make big changes? What was your lasting impression that you wanted to have on the place?
I think just it kind of comes back to when I say when a few good distributors have really everyone, I just feel like there's just so many cookie cutter kind of wine lists, everywhere you kind of go. And once again, I'm talking mainly about Brisbane, but there's just a lot of the same producers, the same wines everywhere you go. It's kind of just a bit boring, for want of a better term. So I think I tracked down a lot of these cool producers, and you'd be surprised, although they might not be on the circuit as much, they are still somehow finding their way into Australia, a lot of these wines. So it's just about sort of tracking down the wines that I fell in love with over there, and then slowly assimilating them into the wine list was the big thing.
Well, that's a really good way to kind of, have something unique and introduce people to left of centre wines that they haven't seen before, which is always kind of sometimes a bit tricky, I suppose, for guests in a restaurant. But that's the job of sommeliers at the end of the day, isn't it? To be there to communicate and talk them through it. So how does Siffredi's come about?
To be honest, turns out during COVID, you can't sit on Centrelink forever, it turns out. You have to eventually get a job.
That's very true.
There was really, after, I think, my wine journey had kind of just been progressing, and I just kind of wanted to take a bit of a step back from that really structured, wearing a suit with the little sort of great pins on your lapel. I just kind of wanted to take a step back and just have a more just down-to-earth approach with wine. Wear a t-shirt and some jeans and just still do the same level of service, but in more kind of just casual, kind of don't have to think so hard.
Well, that's a nice approach. And you ended up opening Siffredi's with, was it the chef, one of the chefs from Stokehouse, is that right?
No, he was the executive chef of Stokehouse at Melbourne and Brisbane. And yeah, pretty much just went to him during COVID. Oh my God, I know it's controversial to say, but those were some great months, being unemployed and just playing golf 2-3 times a week. I'm still rubbish at it, by the way, but we were just playing golf, and I kind of just said, let's just do a pasta bar. Let's just have some fun with it and just not take ourselves so seriously for a bit.
Yeah, I think for a lot of people that time was a breath of fresh air. For people that have been running on the mill and like a mouse for so long, I certainly really took a step back and thought about what I wanted and just gave myself some breathing space. So I don't think there's anything wrong with saying that. It was an important time to kind of reevaluate. And I love what you've said about that. And, often when someone says to me, what do you want to eat if you could go anywhere? I often say bistro, or I say a good plate of pasta and a really good glass of wine. It doesn't get much better than that. So, that's the kind of stuff that chefs I know like to do on their days off. So I think that the idea behind it's amazing.
Yeah, well, I think we ruffled some feathers as well, especially with some of the Italian community in Brisbane, because obviously my business partner Ollie, he's from Leicestershire. Neither of us are Italian, but so he's got a really kind of interesting twist. We've done green curry spaghettis and stuff like that, just a whole just reimagining spaghetti or pasta in general and doing some weird flavors, kind of things that we were doing at Stokehouse, but now we're just carby spaghetti.
Yeah, but we wouldn't have some of the amazing cuisines we have today if someone wasn't pushing the boat out. So good on you guys for doing that. And if you cop some heat, it probably means you're doing something a little unique. So I love it.
Yeah, no, I like to think so.
How would you describe the kind of clientele that come in, and what do you love most about the kind of people that you're serving?
I think the most important part with just any restaurant in general is to remember you're there for the people. It's all well and good to try to for me to have just gone down some just pushing my own wine agenda on people, but I'm a firm believer that the restaurant decides what it wants to be. If people keep asking me for this, well, then that's going to be on the list. So just kind of changing. But yeah, so, you could try to do a cool little pasta bar and try to market to a bunch of hip 30-year-olds. But if you average demographic or clientele are in their 50s, retirees and stuff like that, living in Tenerife, you're going to make some changes, or you're going to go out of business.
And, I always found that there's an opportunity there to kind of broaden your own kind of palate as well. If everybody's asking for rosé and everybody wants dry Provence rosé, there's a lot of great producers out there, and they don't all have to be kind of what people imagine. There's lots of layer and detail in some of those producers. So you kind of find something that kind of fits both, don't you find? What they want, but also kind of what interests you, and also what fits the kind of vibe of the restaurant.
Yeah, we always kind of joke in Brisbane that people drink rosé with their eyes. It just has to have that right colour and be from Provence, and that's pretty much it. But yeah, like you said, there's a bunch of cool producers out there. There's always something new to try.
You could always just serve rosé out of black glasses and just tell them that, that has to be out of a black glass, and they don't have a chance to make that assumption.
Yeah, maybe I'll experiment. I'll get back to you on that.
Alex, what do you love most about your job, and what is the part that you think you'd like to skip over each year?
The best part is I just hired all my friends, really. So sometimes it doesn't really feel like work when you're with a bunch of people, and then, you spend 30, 40 hours with them every week, but then for some reason you all hang out on your days off as well, which is probably a bit silly. But working with people that you love is probably the best part. And the part I'd love to skip over, geez, there's so much admin. Like, it's so boring. There's always people, like always someone hassling you for money. Like, it's just, you forget an invoice. People act like I'm just trying to dodge their calls. I'm like, you didn't give me a paper invoice. I didn't check my emails. I'm sorry. I'll pay you tomorrow. How's that sound?
There is a lot, and I think sometimes people forget that, a huge part of your job is working on a restaurant floor, in the heat of service. And then, there's this whole other life of 9 to 5 where people sit in front of a desk and get all that done. But you have to maintain, a huge part of your job, which is a lot of energy and a lot of time, running up and down and doing that. And then do all those other components as well. And you've only got 24 hours in the day, and you do need to sleep some of it.
Yeah. So much mopping as well. Oh my God.
Mopping? Have you got like concrete floors or something like that?
Yeah, just and plants. So many plants we've got there. So that's like, it's a chore just to water them every week. But yeah, like that's it. The best parts are during service. And sometimes you'll be on site for 10, 11 hours, but really only there for like a solid 3 hours of service. And that's the best part. That's why you do it. The regulars that come in, when you push someone out of their comfort zone with a wine, like, what do you usually drink at home? All right. So then you probably like this or this or this, try this. And getting people to try different wines is always the most exciting part of the job.
Yeah, I totally agree. And it is, it's so rewarding when you go on a journey with a customer and they trust you and you come out the other side and it's been an enjoyable experience, because it makes you feel really good. And you, like you said, you've turned them onto something, a great producer or somebody that, makes great wine and you help everybody out and it comes full circle. So.
Yeah. With a more smaller and concise list, I'm not just going to buy, just the wines. I'm not going to just buy New Zealand Sauv Blanc because everyone keeps asking for it, but I'll find something that's kind of not too dissimilar and kind of push people down that pathway. And nine out of 10 times they'll kind of thank me for it or enjoy it. And they've got something else to look for now when they go to Dan Murphy's.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's I think it's a great approach, and there is so much wine out there as well, and we need to kind of share the love of everybody that's attempting to do different and exciting styles. So what's next for you, and what's on the cards for the future?
I feel like we're all kind of, especially in the restaurant industry, we're all kind of feeling the after effects of COVID-19. That it's been a tough couple of months. Over a year now. There's just some good weeks and some bad weeks. So I think just keeping your head above water over the next year or two. But then just there's something great about like opening up a restaurant, because it's kind of got your DNA, your thumbprint on it. So I'd love to maybe do something else, do something a bit different. My kind of idea of what a wine bar should look like, or my idea of what this should look like, or something weird and wonderful. I keep joking that I want to open up a Sri Lankan restaurant and just do hoppers and stuff like that, hoppers and nutty wines, and play hip hop in the background. So I think there's something to be said about a venue kind of sharing the same intrinsic, fiber of who you are as a person. It's kind of artistic representation. It sounds a bit wanky, but
it doesn't at all. And I think that you're onto something there. Hoppers, hip hop, and hot AF wines. I could sign up for that easy.
Yeah. Do you want to go into business? I know you got some free time.
I have zero free time. I'm a screaming child.
Yes. That'll do it.
That'll do it. Alex, hit me up.
Consultancy basis then.
Yeah. Well, now that I could do. Alex, tell me if you can drink 3 beverages for the rest of your life. What are they going to be?
It's kind of a riff on a question, like in wine circles. We always sometimes ask, like, if you only could drink from one wine region in the whole world. So you'd always think about a place that has like a real breadth. It does a sparkling, a white, a red, a dessert wine. But I think we touched on it before, but beer. Obviously, beer is first and foremost. Followed by, I'm going to say champagne. Champagne is a lot more versatile than a lot of people give it credit for, you know. Something about grow a champagne and a whole bucket of KFC that just somehow works magic. And you know what? I'd just be happy with those two, you know?
Alex, it has been real.
It's been a blast.
It's been so nice. And I haven't seen you for such a long time. And I'm sad about that. But hopefully when you get down to Sydney a junket comes up, we'll be able to catch up and have a beer together or a pet nap.
Yeah, I look forward to it.
Best of luck for everything. And thanks for joining me today. Cheers to you.
Absolute pleasure.
This is Over a Glass. I'm Shanteh Wale. Stay tuned for more stories from the world of wine and drinks. Listen in every Thursday on your podcast app. Follow us on Instagram @overaglasspod and contact us at overaglass@deepintheweeds.com.au.